Let me share something with you this morning is that I had a young man come into my office and ask, how do you find the right one? And he had found that searching for love in this texting, social media, swipe left or right culture that we have, found it a little bit difficult and challenging. How do you find the right person? How do you know when you have the right one? What's interesting, about half of Americans are single, and I think also some struggling with this hookup, texting, social media culture that we're living in, find the dating landscape difficult. And as a pastor, we want to help people navigate these difficult waters. Two of the most important decisions we will make is, one is, will I get married? And then who will I marry? Those are two big decisions, and the Bible has a lot to say about these decisions. And not only do we want to help people navigate these waters, but as a church, we want to help parents navigate these waters as they help their young people, their kids navigate these waters, navigate these challenging decisions. And then, of course, there's some men here, maybe your kids are already married and grown, but maybe they're not there yet. But we all know people who are looking. How do we help them navigate? Would they come and maybe ask questions or sharing thoughts and situations? How do we help them? And so we want to talk about relationships, relationship status. Last week we talked about single. Today we're talking about looking, and then we'll get into dating and then married and parenting. There's something for everybody in this. And the dating landscape is getting more difficult. I don't know if you guys remember. I'm going to challenge your memories here. So back in, I think it was 2019, I was doing a message and I mentioned that there was a young man in China who had married a hologram. Does anybody remember me sharing? I know you guys are looking at me like, what? Yes, he married a hologram, a fictional character that was a hologram. He married it. That was back in 2019. Now he's run in 2018, I think he got married. I think I mentioned in 2019. The problem here is the company that was doing the software so he could interact with this hologram discontinued it, and now she's gone. I know, we laugh, but he's heartbroken. And it's getting worse. The new trend is people are dating robots, getting married to robots. And by 2050, they're predicting that people marrying robots will be normal. Now it sounds crazy, but by 2050, they're saying that will be commonplace. Now, maybe there's some benefits. She doesn't eat, I mean, the needs are probably pretty low. I just don't know what the upkeep, software update could run into problems, I don't know. And the purchasing maybe could be as low as $6,000 or up to $50,000 or more, depending on how interactive you want him or her. But I think part of what's going on here, not only has technology led us down this path, but the struggle in relationships have led some people to say, hey, I just give up on relationships. It would be easier to get a robot. She will do what I tell her to do. Just saying. I mean, maybe they only argue with you when you want them to argue with you. All right, that's a good argument. Let's stop now. Now do what I say. I don't know, just, you think about all the ramifications of this and relationships that are moving away from true relationships with real communication and thought and struggle that needs to be worked through, that is so beneficial to our lives, to have a mannequin that we just tell it what to do and it just does everything we want it to. Our selfishness just becomes overwhelming, and I imagine we just lose ourselves in that process. But that's where the world is heading that we live in. Is I think more than ever, we need to talk about relationships and how we have healthy relationships in the middle of this. Singleness. Last week we talked about singleness and how important that is. That singleness is a part of our lives, at least for a season. God has designed singleness to be a part of our lives for at least a season. And the Bible talks about the value of singleness. It doesn't talk about single people being second rate. There's actually value to that. And it's interesting, in the Middle Ages, they put a value on singleness and kind of devalued marriage. So they valued one over the other. Now, maybe in our day and age, we swung the other way. We value marriage maybe more than singleness. The thing is, there's value to both. Jesus was never married, but he was very fulfilled in his life and what he accomplished. We believe that Paul was single, yet very fulfilled, and it did so much for the kingdom. There is value and benefit to singleness. And I would say that there's a gift for both. There's a gift for being singleness and there's a gift for marriage, that they are both a gift from God. And sometimes we get so caught up trying to find the right person that we fail to become the right person. And that's something we don't want to do. That there is a purpose in our singleness, but we can get so caught up in trying to find the right one that we fail to become the right one. Are we becoming the right one? Are we becoming the person that we need to be for the person that God is bringing to us? Are you personally the type of person that will draw the person you want? Did you guys get that? Are you personally the type of person who will draw the kind of person you want? If we are negative and critical, chances are we are going to draw somebody who is. If we are positive and we are generous and caring, most likely we are going to draw somebody who's positive, who's caring and generous. Are we ready? Are we doing what we need to do so that we're ready when the right person shows up? We are ready. Well, we're going to talk about a story this morning that has to do about looking for the right person. And I think there's a lot we can learn from this. It's a great story in Genesis 24. If you want to turn to your Bible, you can, or you can read along with me on the screen behind me. Let's read through this. It's a rather lengthy story, but it's a lot of fun, and it will take a little bit of time to go through it, and I think it'll be good. All right, verse 1, Genesis 24, verse 1, Abraham now was very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. And he said to his senior servant, who was Eliezer in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. Now this starts out very interestingly, but this is something they were taking an oath or kind of entering into covenant. This was a serious thing that he was going to ask his servant to do. And he says, I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I'm living, but will go to my country and to my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. And so he was sending him out. He didn't want him to get a wife from the Canaanites, not because there was some sort of racial thing going on here, but because the Canaanites were idol worshipers, and he wanted him to go back to his home country, to his relatives, and get a wife there who had a similar upbringing, similar faith that he had. And that's who he was to choose. Verse 6, make sure that you do not take my son back there, Abraham said. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household in my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me an oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land. There was a promise, there was a purpose for Abraham's life, and his son needed a spouse to go along with that purpose and plan that God had. And he will send his angel before you so that he can get a wife for my son there. In verse 8 and 9, he says, if the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master Abraham and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. And then verse 10, then the servant left, taking with him 10, just notice here, this is important later, 10 of his master's camels loaded with all kinds of good things from his master. And he sent out for Aram Naharaim and made his way to the town of Nahor. And he had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was toward evening, the time women would go to draw water. So he picked a very good time to go there. Then he said, Lord, God of my master Abraham, make me successful today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside the spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a young woman, please let down your jar that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too. Let her be the one whom you've chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was a daughter of Bethuel, a son of Milcah, who was also the wife, notice here, the wife of Abraham's brother, so they're related cousins. The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man have ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. Now, interestingly enough, as we read this, we think here, okay, she was beautiful, but she's a cousin, and that's gross. You know, back in their day, they would say she's beautiful, she's a cousin, that's bonus. And so that may not be as common today, although in some places of the country, I think it is. but we're not going to go there. I'm on strict orders by my wife not to go there. And I'm going to stop. All right, verse 17. The servant hurried to meet her and said, please give me a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. Verse 19, after she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too. Just like he had been praying about, she's doing it until they have had enough to drink. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew enough for all the camels. 10 camels had been across the desert, right? That had to be a significant amount of work, significant amount of water. Verse 21, without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a gold nose ring weighing a beka and 2 gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. So he brings out the nose ring and the bracelets and she puts them on. This is like changing your Facebook status from single to in a relationship. That's the equivalent to today. And for me, when I was in Bible school and Stacy and I met, that's what I did. When I was like, man, I really like this girl, I brought her a nose ring and bracelets, I put them on her, and the status was changed. It still happens in some places in America. All right. In verse 26, then the man bowed down and worshiped the Lord, saying, praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the journey to the house of my master's relatives. And I highly recommend that you use the nose ring and the bracelets. I think it works really well. So just encourage you young people, if you need a way to just, change never mind, okay. Don't take that advice. That is not good advice. All right, in verse 28, the young woman ran and told her mother's household about all these things. Now, Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring. So she's going and telling her family, her household. As soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets, man, he knew what was going on, right? And had Rebekah tell what the man had said to her, and he went out to the man and found him standing by the camels near the spring. Come, you who are blessed of the Lord, he said, why are you standing out here? I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So they're going to celebrate. They're going to get to know each other better and talk this out. Verse 49 says, now, Eliezer, the servant, repeats this whole story to the family there, and this is kind of how he concludes it in verse 49. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me. If not, tell me, so I know which way to turn. Like, does this girl want to go marry, my master's son or not? Tell me. So they called Rebekah and asked her in verse 58, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go, she said. And so this is history right here. This is what happened with Abraham and Isaac and finding a wife for his son. And so you might ask, why is this story in the Bible? And so part of the reason Genesis was written to show that how God had blessed Abraham and what he had called Abraham to do and how the whole world would be blessed through Abraham, through Jesus. But it was also as an example so other families growing up could read this and see how God provided a wife for his son and that they could read it and learn from it as an example. And we can identify some principles in the story that will also help us in our day and age, and that's what we'll pull out of here today. Let me give you a few examples, maybe not to follow from the story. Number one, putting your hand under somebody's thigh. Probably not a good idea in our day and age, so don't do that. Again, the nose ring and the bracelets, probably not going to go over well. It worked very well for Stacy, but I don't think anybody else will. That will work well for her. And then the whole thing of signs, there's like, give me a sign. If she does this, then she's the one. If she doesn't do that, she's not the one. Again, in our day and age, in the New Testament, and the way we follow Jesus, not also a good way either. We should just pray that through and have God lead us and guide us and also find good counsel. But there are 4 good guides, I think, from the story. We could pull out a few more, but for sake of time, let me give you 4 good guides that we can learn from the story that will help us if you're looking for the right one, or if you know somebody who's looking for the right one, this would be helpful too. So the first one is spiritual unity. We see this in verse 7. It says, the Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, Abraham here talking, and spoke to me about promised me an oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son there. So he's sending his son back to his people. And there's a sense of spiritual unity there. He's not pulling from Canaanites who are worship idols in that land, but he's going back to his home country, to his home people. So I think there's, in a sense, a spiritual unity that is here, that finding a wife that has the same, in a sense, the same call of God on there for what God has called Abraham to do. And so there is a sense of spiritual unity here. And that becomes very important, because if we don't have a spiritual unity, I mean, God is such a huge part of our lives. If we're not in unity on our relationship with God, then how do we manage that? The biggest part of our life we can't share with our spouse. If one's saved and one's not saved, if one's following Jesus, one's not following Jesus, there's a huge part of our life that can't be compatible because we're not moving in the same direction. There's not a unity there. And so this becomes very important in our closest relationships. I think really God has designed marriage to be like a three-legged stool. You got to have the three legs. You need a man, a woman, and you need God. And if you have anything less, there's not enough legs for stability. And so those three legs make for a stable marriage. And so there needs to be spiritual unity. And there's a New Testament equivalent to this in 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Verse 14 says this: do not be yoked together with unbelievers. Here's what he's talking about. Because there's no spiritual unity there. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? So what he's saying, the biggest part of our life, our relationship with God, should be similar to the relationship with the person we're going to marry. If we don't, then we're going to have a different world value system. And so it's going to cause problems. How do we raise our kids? How do we discipline our kids? How are we going to live our life? What's right to do? What's not? There's so many decisions that faith plays a part in that this becomes very important. But then on the opposite side, what we sometimes see is missionary dating. Has anybody heard somebody do missionary dating? You guys know what missionary dating is? This is where somebody dates somebody who's not saved in order to try and get them saved. Missionary dating. This usually doesn't work very well either. So I don't encourage people. Missionary dating is not a good idea. You want to marry somebody who has a strong relationship with God before you ever knew them or got together with them in a relationship, that they bring that to the table. Because you need to have a relationship with God separate from your spouse, but you need to have a relationship with God that's also connected to your spouse. And they've got to own it for themselves. So missionary dating typically is a bad thing to do. We don't want to do that. And usually it ends like this, and this is what tries to happen, is that, a wedding is made up of an altar. Actually, an aisle. You walk down the aisle, there's an altar, and then you sing a hymn. Aisle, altar, hymn. And usually what it becomes, if the woman, yeah, you already got it. I know, I saw that. And so if the girl is missionary dating, trying to convert him, it's aisle, altar, hymn. It's aisle, altar, hymn. Aisle, altar. Are you guys with me this morning? Okay, it's just a bad joke. Okay, got it. So anyway, we try to change our spouse. We'll talk afterwards. But I got some more good jokes. You got some too. We'll connect on that. And so so we try to change the person. But we can't change somebody. Man, if you're already married, you understand you can't change. You can't force your spouse to change. It's something God has to do in them. So missionary dating does not work well. We want somebody who's truly a Christian, somebody who doesn't just name it, but who is living it out, who is walking it, who reads their Bible, who prays, who goes to church, hangs out with other believers, tries to live their life as best they can, following Jesus with their life. This is what we're looking for. This is what makes for a good, healthy, strong marriage. Are we really getting together with somebody who's a Christian? Let me tell you a story. I don't know, some of you people that are a little bit older like me might remember Gary Hart. He was running for president. He's a Democrat candidate back in 1987. And he was at least in the lead during the primaries until there was a scandal. And the scandal was he was having an affair. All right, and so he was kind of the front runner and doing well, and he had an affair with Donna Rice. And so what happened was she grew up in a Christian family, had given her life to Jesus and was following God and only dating Christians and doing very well. But when she went to college, she kind of laxed up on her boundaries, on her convictions. And she started to date guys that weren't a Christian, and it led her, one compromise after another, led her down a road where she ends up having an affair with this guy who's a very popular candidate. And of course, when it came out, he denied it until somebody showed this picture of the two of them together. They're out on a dock, but they're on a boat. And the boat, this yacht, its name is Monkey Business. I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up. And there was monkey business going on. And so nonetheless, it ruined his chances for running and, of course, just devastated her life. But the amazing thing about what Donna did after this all exploded was she could have written some books and made millions. She could have done interviews and made millions. She kind of just went underground and started seeking God. Went for total restoration, just put her relationship with God at the front, more important than anything else, and just kind of went underground for about 7 years, just praying, reading, connecting with other strong believers to help her through this process, and emerged strong and healthy, and got married to a good Christian man as part of a nonprofit organization that is helping people. But because of little compromises, it led her down a road of destruction. And sometimes in our dating relationships, well, just a little compromise here, a little compromise there, but look where it can go. If you go to my next slide, this is a quote from her. She said, "In my case, I learned that although God loves us, he doesn't grant us immunity from the consequences of our choices." Talking about spiritual unity, how important that plays out in our closest relationships. Let's talk about character. We see character in this. Look what Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, was looking for in verse 14. It said, "May it be that when I say to a young woman, 'Please let down your jar that I might have a drink,' she says, 'Drink, and I will water your camels too.'" Remember, 10 camels, probably a lot of water, a lot of buckets. It wasn't just like one bucket, one cup. It was multiple buckets. That she was kind, she was a servant, she was helpful. And so I think this speaks to character. When we're looking and wanting to think about who should I date, are we looking for character? We tend to look on the outside, how pretty he or she is, how handsome he or she is, but are we looking beyond that to character? Because character is very important in our closest relationships. Are they kind? Are they a kind person? How do they treat the waiter when the waiter messes up the order? If she or he is kind towards you, but very disrespectful to the waiter when he messes up, eventually that will get directed at you. Are you guys with me? What may be cussing at the waiter, nice whispers in your ear, will eventually become cussing at you. Character, kindness is important. Are they kind? And when we start looking for how do they treat other people, how do they treat their parents? Ladies, if you want to know how a guy will treat you, how does he treat his mother? How does he treat his parents? How does he treat his father? Guys, if you're looking, how is she going to treat you? How does she treat her dad? That's going to be an indication for how she will treat you. We're looking for kindness. We're looking for character. We're looking for patterns in their life. Do they have a character that shows kindness? Are they a person, like we could go through a long list, but are they supportive? Is it somebody that supports and cares about you, your goals and your dreams? Or do they only care about their goals and their dreams? Do they try to complete you or compete with you? These are the things we need to think through. Do they try and lift you up or do they try to tear you down? Are they a person of integrity? Are they honest? Are they trustworthy? Do they tell the truth? Man, if they don't tell the truth, man, there's no relationship there because relationships are built on truth. And without truth, you have no relationship. Are they honest? Are they a person of integrity? Are they a quitter? Are they going to quit when things get hard? Are they trustworthy? Are they emotionally healthy? Are they emotionally healthy? This becomes a big deal because they've found from studies that 80% of separations and divorce happen because one or both people in the relationship are emotionally unhealthy. Are you emotionally healthy? Is the person you want to date emotionally healthy? That is a big deal. Kindness, character. We're talking about character. We're talking about emotionally healthy. Here's the thing, everybody's broken. We talked about that in the first series of this year. We did a series called The Battle. We talked about everybody's broken. There's no perfect person, and you put two imperfect people together, man, you're gonna have problems. It's just part of it. But here's the thing, we're all equally sinful, we're not equally broken. And there's a certain maturity that relationships require for them to be healthy. We want to make sure that the person we're entering into a relationship with is emotionally healthy. How are they doing in this area? How do they deal with anger? Do they have uncontrolled anger, or they have their anger controlled? Are they addicted to anything? Is there a root of bitterness in their life? How they deal with selfishness? We all struggle with selfishness. Are they able to get a handle on that and recognize the selfishness that they have or exhibit? Do they have a handle on that? Conflict, man, that's part of our conflict is I want what I want, she wants what she wants, and nobody wants to meet in the middle or try and talk this thing out. Selfishness, how do we do with selfishness? How do we do with being greedy? We all struggle with greedy, but how are we doing? Do we recognize our greed? Are we able to let go and be generous with what we have? How are we doing? You see, just on the outside, just being pretty doesn't make for a happy marriage. In our culture, we're sold that, right? You put two pretty people together and they're gonna have a great marriage. And we know, we can look at Hollywood and that doesn't happen just because they're good looking on the outside. The question is, how good looking are you on the inside? That's what becomes important. So we can go to Hollywood and see how messed up the relationships are. It doesn't matter how good looking they are. If the inside is junk, there's gonna be junk all over that relationship. And we see that, we know that. And we see marriages in Hollywood just destroyed one after another. Here's the thing we need to remember. Marriage does not create problems, it reveals them. Boy, think about that before you get married. Oops. Marriage, that's what Stacy said when she looked at me, and not the other way around. She's like, oh, if I only would have, no. Marriage doesn't create problems. Let's see, many times it just reveals the problem that's there. You see, marriage should be a place of transformation, but many times it's a place of amplification. It amplifies what's already there, just makes it worse. Because anytime you put two people in close proximity, there's opportunity for more conflict. So here's what we need to remember. Marriage does not create problems, it reveals them. Many times it amplifies them. But we should make marriage a place where it can be transformed. But that's not as easy as amplification, right? We all know that. We've all experienced that. Here's a myth we ought to just explode here. Love alone is not enough reason to marry, right? Love alone is not enough. Yeah, but I love him. Yeah, but I love her. That's not enough. I can put you in the right situation with the right circumstances and get you to fall in love with almost anybody. How do you think adultery happens? Put you in the right circumstances with the right situation, and you can fall in love with just about anybody. That's why we put boundaries around a life. That's why there's guardrails. That's why there's certain things we don't do. Love is not enough. Imagine, I'd like to give that for an answer, right? They come in for marriage counseling. Oh, love's enough. It's not. All right, number 3, godly counsel. Get godly counsel before you enter into a relationship, before you get too serious, get godly counsel. Genesis 24, 28 through 29 says the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring. As soon as he had seen the nose ring, right, he knew what was going on, the bracelets on his sister's arms. I love that, it's a great part of the story. And had Rebekah tell what the man said to her, so he's getting the whole download and the scoop. She is going back and telling her family what is going on. She's getting godly counsel. Man, so many problems can be avoided if we'll get some outside counsel, because you know why? Because love is blind, right? Love is blind. When we are in love, we don't see the faults and the failures of the other person. We're not good at judging. Is this a good fit for me? Not a good fit. And you know what the answer to love is blind? Marriage. Sorry, that's another joke. You guys thought, no, that's not the way you want to do this. But you know what? A marriage does eventually take the blinders off. But love is blind. That's why we've got to be able to take those blinders off and really evaluate. Does this work well? Is this a good fit? Godly counsel is important, and that's what she was doing. And she had a choice, right? Yes, I want to go. No, I don't want to go. This is important. Proverbs 19, verse 19 and 20 says, a hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. Rescue them, and you will have to do it again. Listen to advice and accept discipline. In the end, you will be counted among the wise. Notice, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end, you will be counted among the wise. Again, getting godly advice is so helpful. Let's go to the last one. Pray, trust God, faith. Look at verse 15 and 16. He says, before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out. He was praying about his trip. He was praying about finding the right one. And we need to place our faith and trust in Jesus, not just for our salvation, but for our lives and even for our dating life, for our married life, and be praying, God, lead me to the right person. Help me to find the right person for me. Not that there's one right person, but Lord, bring me to the right person for me. Are we praying about that? Are we giving it to God? Are we trusting him to bring us into relationship with the right person? It doesn't mean we don't try to find the right person, right? There's a verse that says, if you find a good wife, you talk about finding indicates some action, some effort on our part. How about Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 and 34? It says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Meaning put God first, pray about everything, give it into his hands, God will provide. It says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough of its own, enough trouble for its own. God knows what we need. God knows what we're looking for. We seek him first, allow him to give us what we need. We need to remember in the process the principle of experienced love. Here's the thing. As followers of Jesus, we should be the best at loving those around us. In 1 John 4:11, he says, dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. This is the principle of experienced love. If we've experienced the love of God in our lives, in our heart, then we should be good at loving those around us. And we should allow God to make that change in our life, that we've been loved by him, and it empowers us to love those around us. Let me close with this verse, Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. It's the same verse that I read during the baptism. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. We need to be reminded to trust God in all our areas. Even our closest relationships. What area of your life today do you need to trust God in? Whether it's single, looking, dating, married, parenting, God knows exactly where you're at this morning. In what way or what area do you need to trust God this morning?